Hello everyone and welcome back to IMO Reviews. Today we are sadly discussing Gran Turismo. Yes, it's a real film, directed by Neill Blomkamp and starring Orlando Doom, David Harbour, Jimon Honsu and Archie Madekwe. The winner of a Gran Turismo gaming competition will be given the chance to become a professional driver for Nissan at Le Mans. So, here we are, talking about this film that nobody asked for, and you will be surprised to find out that I do in fact have a couple of positives. I am going to be a little bit biased on this, but I did enjoy the soundtrack, and I'm biased because a lot of the soundtrack is Black Sabbath. I'm a big fan of theirs, you're always going to put a smile on my face when you play Paranoid, and I did enjoy some of the other more modern tracks in the film as well, but even in the soundtrack I still had issues. They do rely on Black Sabbath a little too much. Paranoid is played maybe 3 times in the film, and they also just don't take advantage of the song having any meaning in the moment. In fact, they do quite the opposite, playing War Pigs, a very anti-establishment song, in a scene where Nissan are celebrating. Bit of a odd blend there. And I also do think that there should be some small credit to the stunt team as well. There are some hits and smashes in the movie. They're not exactly jaw-dropping and mind-blowing, but they're real, and I appreciate that because they could have very easily done it with CGI. And speaking of the CGI, they do have the excuse that obviously this is built into a video game, so they can actually rely on the graphics of the video game, which does feel a little bit lazy, but I'll allow it. But to some degree I thought it was a good idea because it did make things go up a level when we actually start getting into the cars and driving for real. There is a good translation from sitting on your sofa and watching yourself do it on the TV to actually being behind the wheel and actually feeling it and being there and doing it. I do think that aspect was very well realised, and I suppose we can say that the film is competently made, but only to the bare minimum requirement, and that really is it for the positives, unfortunately. So let's get into the negatives. This film just takes itself far too seriously. It's so over the top, and it isn't doing anything that you haven't seen before a million times over. It really is the most phoned in, lazy, run-of-the-mill, dad you don't understand me bullshit going. This script must have only taken a couple of hours to knock out. I mean, there's just no depth to it at all. Everything is just slip and shiny surface level. I promise you, you've seen this film before. You've seen it a million times before. You've seen it in a million different skins before, whether it be in a book, a video game, another movie, a TV series. It's that paint by numbers, and it does it without any fun or enjoyment along the way. It's so cliche and so stereotypical that you yourself, the audience members, can cue in the plot beats. This is the classic moment where our hero has a fall before he has his miraculous rise. This is the classic moment where the old grumpy coach has to give him a word of motivation to get him back on his feet so he can complete this mission. There's also quite shameless PlayStation merchandising throughout this film. In fact, it goes beyond PlayStation. It does start going into the cars as well, with Nissan clothing and such. But there are these little sound effects that you will recognise, and endless product placement of gaming chairs and esports conventions. And to be fair, if you're a mega gaming fan, you actually might like this aspect of the film. I personally just saw it as them subtly trying to tell me to buy all their stuff. And if that's what I wanted to do, I would have flicked through the Argos catalogue. What I was hoping for was a good story and some interesting characters. The cast are all round pretty bad here. David Harbour is doing what he does. He's probably the most watchable of the bunch, but to be honest, there's even times in this movie where he looks a bit Archie Madekwe, I'm really sorry because I don't think I've seen you in anything before. You probably are an up-and-comer, but this ain't it. He comes across as such a dry, empty, boring plank of wood here. Granted, he's got absolutely nothing to work with in the script. All we know is his name, his dad doesn't understand him, and he likes racing. That's literally all he's got on paper. But even then, there's just no emotion to his line reads. Everything's really flat and down here. It's so mopey, it's so boring. I don't want to watch him. I don't find him engaging. There's no personality to it. There's nothing for me to latch onto. All I know is that he's boring and he he likes to drive. You needed someone with some charisma for this role. Someone you can actually relate to, get behind, someone you want to see succeed. But instead what we essentially get is basically a cardboard cutout of a main character. It's just utterly lifeless. It's also nice to see that Orlando Doom still is yet to figure out this acting gig. He's so dull, isn't he? Just in everything I've seen him in, it's the same damn performance. He is the definition of one note. Make him an elf in Middle-earth, and he's gonna perform it like this. And if you make him a serial killer in a crime documentary, he'll also perform it like this. He kinda sounds constipated and he's really breathy. He always sounds like he's trying to seek justice for the murder of his father. I also love that they had the cheek to say that this is based on a true story. This is a true story in the sense that there was probably once upon a time a Gran Turismo gaming competition, and the winner probably got to drive around a track somewhere with a professional driver for a day. Everything else, absolute fantasy. There's also parts of the racing that don't make sense in this movie, and I am far from a professional, but even I know these details. I'm going to give Gran Turismo a 2 out of 10. There are some small aspects to the movie that do keep it from being god-awful, but it is every bit as bad as I expected it to be. The biggest crime that it commits is that it's just so utterly predictable, unimaginative, dull. It's so cliche. You don't even really need to see it. You can definitely predict how this goes, and you're probably right. The best metaphor that I have for this movie is that I feel like I paid money to sit down in the cinema, get all cozy, and waited for a movie to turn on, and instead what happened is the staff just sort of dragged a corpse out. And we just sort of stared at it for 2 hours. And that's the best metaphor I have for this, because it is utterly lifeless. It is dead on arrival. I mean, maybe if you like racing, if you like cars, you might get a kick out of this movie. But if I'm being honest, if that's the case, I would suggest better racing movies to you to try out first. Ford vs Ferrari, Rush, heck, Talladega Nights if you want to chuck in a comedy angle to it. All of the above wipe their ass with Gran Turismo. Thank you for watching this review. Please be sure to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and please do hit the comment section as well. Have you seen Gran Turismo? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comment section below. And of course, if you haven't had enough of this crazy ginger, well, you can always click on these suggested videos right here and get yourself lost in an IMO wormhole. But if not, take care, and I look forward to seeing you on the next review.